Hello everyone, this is RC053 and I'm bringing you a Canadian Motorized deck. Now this is the one I used in my Punjing Valley gameplay, so I'll be linking this in the description. Now anyways, this is my Canada Motorized. Canada's a fun country to play because it requires you to use some unique play styles, some unique tricks. Anyways, let's dive right in. First I've got some command squad, these command infantry, and they're coming in a CH-118. So CH-118, it's just a standard Huey with an M60 mounted on the side of it. So, you know, it's just a standard Huey, really. And then as a vehicle, I'm bringing in the Grizzly CP. Now, you might be wondering why I'm taking the Grizzly CP over what I would usually recommend being like the Iltis CP or the M38A1 CP. And the answer, not to say it's simple, but the answer is because this is just 15 points more. I get 6 of them, which is the normal amount that you would get of, like, you know, these Iltis CP, maybe -1. But this gives me enough command units to cover basically the entire map. So yeah, that's usually a very helpful thing to have. Maybe some backups, you know, on a smaller map. But anyways, that's kind of my command section. It's pretty quick, and it's got some armor on it. It's also amphibious, so you can kind of do some river crossings and capture stuff that the enemy might not entirely expect. Forward operating base, you know, just for the supplies, you got 16,000 liters of supplies, so a lot of supplies, in other words. And then, not bringing logistics helicopter, because usually this deck is going to be fighting in, like, towns or in forests. Not the best environment to land, you know, a logistics chopper. Instead, using the HLVW, just a 30-point logistics truck. Carries a decent amount of supplies at 1750, and it's also pretty quick at 90 kilometers, and of course, very quick road speed, as with all wheeled vehicles. Moving on to infantry, we have the Canadian Airborne 90s. Now, the Canadian Airborne 90s are great against vehicles, and are pretty good at anti-infantry. I'm taking a lot of them, as you can tell. I'm taking, let's see, 28, what, like 42? Yeah, I want to say 42. That's, you know, not working out the math prior like I should have. But yeah, they're all coming in at elite, which is the big thing with these guys. So they're all coming in at elite, so they all have hyper accuracy. I was getting, you know, just to put this in perspective, with the assault rifle and the mini-me both, I was getting about, like, 90% accuracy, which is insane, of course, but they were engaging at a bit of a closer engagement range, so I'm not entirely certain of the base accuracy at 525 meters calm, you know, with, you know, at that full range. But I do know they were getting close, and they were firing with 90% accuracy, which was pretty crazy, like I said. Then I've got some Highlanders 90 as a land grab force. They're very good at that. They've got the Erics, they've got the C7. They're kind of like Legion, but they're not as good because they don't come in at the shock training, so they don't have the as good of stats, I should say, as, say, the Legion 90s do. But they do carry the Erics, the C7 isn't bad, and the Mini-Me is okay. Then, of course, for our we have our javelins. These are our man pads that we have access to. Now, I'm taking these at hardened because, well, I mean, there's not really much of a reason, in my opinion, to take them at anything higher than that. We're already going to be getting plus 50% accuracy with the hardened bonus. No reason to go too much higher and cut out on a lot more of these. And besides, I'd rather have more javelins than less javelins because they're pretty good. Next, I have the fire support squad with the Erics. The Erics has, this Erics, I should say, has 2 high explosive and 1050 meter range. So they're pretty good. They're very good against enemy infantry. And if you engage them at that full range, you can definitely stun and panic a unit before it gets to the building block. You also are outranging a lot of the enemy infantry, and because, like, no assault rifle or LMG is going to be able to compete with you at that range. And then we finally have the Pioneers. Now, the Pioneers are really good because the Pioneers have the C1 submachine gun. And they also have the M9, which is a flamethrower. The great thing about these guys having an SMG and a napalm and a flamethrower is that these make for, 1, exceptional anti-infantry units, and 2, they make for exceptionally deadly units in towns. So if you were taking this on a town map, first off, I'd recommend getting maybe rid of one of the Canadian Airborne and throwing in some Canadian rifles in order to have, like the 85s, in order to have some meat in the deck. But yeah, so anyways, the Pioneers, very good in town fighting, and they can do quite well in forest fighting as well, because this SMG is still pretty good in forests. And then moving on to support, a very light support tab considering my options. First we have the M113 ADATS. Very lethal unit. If we just look at the stats, it's got a 2800 meter range against ground. It's a dual purpose missile. So you can engage, you know, at one moment you can engage in very dangerous enemy tank, and then, you know, you see an enemy helicopter coming in after you kill the tank, you know, you can order, you know, it to engage the helicopter, and engage the helicopter at a 3325 meter range. So, I mean, that's a huge capability to engage the enemy helicopters at that extensive range. It just makes for an exceptionally good helicopter killer, very good ATGM for Canada. And this is what makes Canada work, I would say. The ADATS just binds it all together. Otherwise, you would have a really subpar military. Then we have the Wolverine. Has the javelins mounted on it, just like the javelins here. But these javelins are mounted in a tri-block, and they're pretty good. They make for good anti-helicopter support, good anti-air support if necessary. They are guided just like the javelins are, and that's a big thing to note with the M113 and the Wolverine. They're both guided, so they won't be able to fire on the move, which is a huge issue if you're escorting a push. You know, you're going to need to stop the entire column in order to engage something. Then we have the Bison 81mm. These are just some standard mortars. Get 8 of them. See, I really like them. They're pretty quick. They're pretty mobile. And they have 3 HE power with 18 rounds a minute rate of fire, which makes them exceptionally good at taking out, you know, just cheap stuff, suppressing enemy infantry. So yeah, I like the Bison. They're pretty good. Tanks. Sticking all the tanks I can get. For a motorized deck, that's a bit odd. But first off, they made it so you can get the Mexus in a motorized deck. Thank you, Eugen. This is one of the changes I'm kind of happy about, because this makes Canada Motorized a much more viable deck, and hopefully they can get people playing Canada more, because I want to see more Canadians. You know, because it's like sort of like that country where it's like holding up its hands like, I'm still here, I haven't been, you know, I'm not out of Wargame yet, right? Right, guys? That's kind of Canada in Wargame Red Dragon. So yeah, we have the Mexus, and then we have the Leopard C2, without all that awesome up-armoring and up-gunning and stuff. You know, it's, well, up-armoring, I guess, is really all that they did to it. But yeah, so this is just the Leopard C2. It's okay. It works. That's what I have to say about it. Good ground range, good accuracy, stabilizer, armor penetration, rate of fire, all of that stuff is good. The, you know, medium machine gun isn't bad, it's still pretty good. It's also very fast, but one of the bigger issues is that you have, you know, only 10 frontal armor, and with the Mexus, you know, you only get 14 frontal armor, which can be an exceptional problem for any tank, is when it doesn't have enough armor. You have to have a balance of armor, tank, you know, armor, main gun, and maneuverability. And it's definitely got the gun and the maneuverability down, but the armor is just lacking. And then I'm bringing in 2 Leopard C1s, using these guys as more fire support, I guess you could say, or something along those lines. Because you'll notice they have exceptional accuracy, static, 60%, which means you can do a lot of sniper action, I guess you could say, with these guys. Good support role, because they have a 2100 meter range. Sadly, not the 2275 meter range, but they're cheap enough, you know. So yeah, very good tank section for Canada. They're not the best tanks, but they do work. Especially in the infantry support role, they have just enough armor to survive, and they also have good enough armor penetration to go toe-to-toe with enemy tanks. Just, once again, mind the armor, you know, the lack of armor. Recon. Canada has some nice recon units. First we have the Pathfinders. Canada is one of those countries that doesn't get its special forces in the infantry tab. They have no special forces in the infantry tab itself, but they do have them in the recon tab. So we do get to take elite Pathfinders, and we get to take 6 of them. That's pretty awesome, because you get, you know, a great carbine here. You have a decent squad automatic weapon, M72 Law is, don't like it. I don't like the M72 Law. I really don't. Also, it's got low arm penetration, low accuracy. The only place that this has any business being in is, I would say, a town. Or, you know, even, yeah, just in a town. That's the only place. Because if you're engaging enemy transports as they come by, you're going to want that 20 rounds a minute rate of fire. And it doesn't matter whether they're hitting or missing, you just want them shooting at the enemy vehicles to stun them, to panic them, to suppress them. All that, you know, that's the way I see it anyways. That's the best place that the M72 Law can operate, in my opinion. The only other place it can operate is really going to be going up against, you know, anti-aircraft positions, you know, that might be behind the enemy lines. But don't use this in these guys in a commando, you know, behind the lines role, in my opinion, because, well, the M72 Law, it's just, you know, you're going to even struggle to go through some of the artillery's armor. Like, some artillery has, like, 7 frontal armor. And if you have to go through all that, it's going to take a couple shots, by which point you're getting more detected, you know, more likely to get spotted if you haven't been spotted already. So I don't really like these guys in that role. Next we have the Recce. Recce are interesting because they have a armor penetration, you know, a 50 caliber sniper rifle with 1 armor penetration with kinetic damage. So they get close enough, you can do some damage. I wouldn't recommend using them as an anti-tank unit, but doesn't mean it's not possible. But yeah, you can use these guys. These are the guys I would recommend using behind the lines, you know, deploying behind the enemy's lines, and then you can go ahead and, you know, snipe out some of the enemies. Not snipe, I mean, like, snipe the, you know, units that you can spot with, like, artillery, or you can call on an ally, because, you know, as you can see, we don't have any long-range artillery in this deck, simply because we don't have access to it. But yeah, you can use these in a behind-the-lines recon role, spot out enemy units, see what's coming, you know, next, knock out high-priority, you know, artillery targets and such. Then we have the Coyote. Really like this thing. It's pretty good. I didn't use it in my gameplay, because I was more worried about the enemies, like, T-90s and stuff that we're bringing out. But it's very good recon. It has very good optics, of course. And it's got 60% accuracy, and it has 3 armor penetration. So this is a very effective, not transport, but very effective infantry fighting vehicle. Sadly, they don't give the cheaper LAV-25, like the normal LAV-25 that the United States gets. This is the only one we've got, so it's kind of expensive, and that's kind of the thing that kind of makes me less eager to use it. Because if it was as plentiful as a normal LAV-25, or an ASLAV-25, just depending on what country you're looking at, you know, if it was as numerous as that, I'd be much more eager to utilize it. Because I would be like, oh, I can just drop it here, you know, I've got 17 of them, but I only have 8. And that's the most I can take. And then we have the Iltis Scout, just using this, I guess you could say, as a exceptional optics, you know, unit that just sits in a bush. Just have this guy sit in a bush, and have him spot stuff. Turn off the Browning, because it will give the position away, but that's what I would say for most units that you're using in a full recon role. Then we get a CH-136. Pretty good here, you know, it's a Kiowa. The one beef I have with these guys is they do have a minigun. Now, that may seem odd that I don't want them to be armed, and don't get me wrong, I liked armed helicopters, but these guys, the biggest issue is that you don't really need them, and they just add to the price. That's the way I see it. So and you don't often use the minigun, it just kind of goes to waste. So, you know, it's better for a recon helicopter to try to run away than it is to stand and fight. So, it's kind of the CH-136. And then I have this M113 Lynx. More so just as a cheap, not to say throwaway, you know, recon unit, but just a cheap one. This is a nice little, you know, funny looking, little logistics vehicle. Still has the British flags on it. But maybe they should change that. You know, maybe, just maybe they should change that, because, you know, this is Canada. I would do like this. This is Canada! But that's not necessarily what Canada would do. What is it? We got some Iltis TOW-2s. Iltis TOW-2s are pretty good. They're against enemy tanks. They're kind of what are called as shoot and scoot, because you shoot the missile, it hits often, you know, it often will hit, So you hit or you fire it, it hits or misses, and then you run. And you retreat, the tank comes forward, you fire the missile, and then it's getting close, so you retreat, and you run, and you keep doing that until you kill the tank, or this thing dies because of an airstrike. Which people will do, because they'll get pretty ticked off at what you're doing against them. So yeah, this is the Iltisto 2. I got some Cougars also on the deck that are just kind of meant to run straight into the enemy lines, not even kidding there, but to maybe kill off some of the enemy's transports or something of that variety, if that's what they want to do. You know, if they don't have anything that can really engage me, like anything with an autocannon or something, these guys can get some cheeky kills off of that using that tactic. For when you really need to defend a position, you can't shoot and scoot, use the M113 TUA. Excuse me there. It's cheaper than the LAV3, but the M113, what you get here is I would just park this, kind of on a ridge and start shooting. Not the TOW. This, because it has the TOW 2 missile. And you might be wondering why I have so many ATGMs in this tab. Well, it's because we don't get them really anywhere else. And it's exceptionally important that we have high... Then. Must be getting tired. Anyways, I have the M113 TUA, which, it's really just there to kill off enemy tanks. Because we don't really get a lot of high armor penetration stuff anywhere else. We don't have any HEM planes, or air-to-ground missile planes. We don't really have any, ATGMs on helicopters. Nope, this is basically it. And we also have this nice little cute M38A1 with the 106mm recoilless rifle. Use this to support infantry. It's pretty good. People underestimate it. They're like, oh, it's a little cheap. Oh, and then it boom, and it blows up, a couple of their guys, which catches them off guard and does a lot of damage to them. In their morale, anyways. For helicopters, I don't have a lot. We have the CH-135 gunship for starters. Just a Huey gunship. Sadly, it doesn't have like the grenade launchers or anything, but it's got 30% accuracy, 2 HE power. Suppression could be better, but it's really just there to kill off an enemy infantry group. And then finally, we also have the CH-118 gunship with twin miniguns, and it's got heat rockets, which means that they're not going to do too well against enemy infantry. In fact, they can't engage enemy infantry. But what they are really good at doing with these is killing off enemy tanks and such. Because they're heat rockets, they will always do 1 point of damage, which means you could hypothetically kill super heavies. I am not even joking. You can kill off super heavies and stuff using like the CH-118 gunship or the Bush Ranger, whatever you want to call it. Bush Ranger being, of course, what the Australians call it. The only other helicopter we have access to is the CH-118 SS-11, and that's kind of the name for the missiles, which are awful, terrible, no good missiles. Don't use these ATGMs. They're awful, terrible, no good, awful missiles. They won't hit, they won't kill, they won't do that good. You just invest in a TOW helicopter. Don't take these. They're just bad. They're terrible. I hate them. And then we move on to our air section where I can finally calm down. First I have the Electric Voodoo with the Shrike Seed missiles. Sadly, we don't get like 2 of these at trained, which means that hitting the enemy target is going to be a struggle for these guys because they're firing at 50% accuracy, so it's sort of toss of the, it's toss of the quarter, toss of the coin, what's gonna, is it gonna hit, is it gonna miss, yeah, that's an issue. So you might have to take 2 of these guys to kill off 1 piece of AA, which can be pretty expensive at 180 points first off. And secondly, that means you also are going to have to start bringing in some Hornets to escort them, because that's a lot of points you're committing, and you have up in the air. Speaking of air superiority fighters, we have the CH-188 Hornet. And it's got the Vulcan, of course, like basically every US plane has. It's got the AIM-9M. Great because it has a 4,200 meter range against aircraft. And it also carries the Sparrow, which is pretty good for an air-to-air missile. It doesn't have the best range at 7,700 meters for a semi-active missile. That's usually the norm, 7,700 for anything that's like fire and forget. But the fact that it's semi-active, like if you're looking at the Soviets, for example, they've got like an 8,400 meter range. So that's a bit, that's quite a bit better actually. So just watch that, just watch out for that. And then we have the CF-18 Hornet. Now the CF-18 Hornets are just cluster bombers. They have 8 cluster bombs apiece, and they also have the AIM-9M and the Vulcan. I wouldn't recommend using any of those other units, or any of those other weaponry and such that's mounted. Just use them as bombers, because you're going to wish that you use them as bombers. Otherwise, they're going to get themselves killed, because they can't go toe-to-toe with enemy air superiority fighters, or else they will die. So just watch out for that. And then we have, of course, a couple of freedom fighters. Not like the Wolverines or Partisans or, Rebels or anything. Nope, this is the actual freedom fighter with 3 500-kilogram bombs and no ECM, because ECM is for cowards. No, it's not. It's for smart people who, care about getting their stuff back alive, but this doesn't have ECM, so consider this basically a one-way trip, and if it survives, hey, you win! That's kind of how I approach these guys. And because of that, I'm taking 8 of them. Basically because there's also no other choices for me to take, and basically any other tap. Unless I wanted to mortar spam, bring in a ton more of these vehicles, which I don't want to. Call in some starfighters, I guess, because I might want to, the rockets. And or call in the best air superiority fighter in the game, the Voodoo. Yeah, this is going to be the best air superiority fighter in the game. Come on, just you guys watch. Guys? No, this is a terrible air superiority fighter. Do not use this thing. The only use that this has is as a screen for your better air superiority fighters. You could try that out. I wouldn't recommend it. They don't really do well. And you're more than likely going to get killed. Happy thought. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing this deck. I hope you guys enjoy seeing it in action and the gameplay. Anyways, this is RC0538 signing off, wishing you a good day.